He wasn't causing trouble. No shouting, no crime, just standing outside a building he knew better than anyone else. But when the police pulled up, their eyes didn't see a man. They saw a threat. Within seconds, sirens cut through the air, and handcuffs clamped around wrists that once signed laws for justice. Cameras were rolling, but most people didn't see who he really was, a US Senator, standing in front of the very courthouse where his name was carved in stone. What happens when power, respect, and dignity mean nothing? Because of the color of your skin. On the streets of America, even a man who writes the laws can be treated like he's breaking them. And when justice closes its eyes, the whole world needs to open theirs. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. Senator Marcus Hill had just finished a meeting at the community center, a place he helped rebuild after years of neglect. Dressed in a simple gray hoodie and jeans, he blended in with the people he served. No cameras, no security detail, just a man taking a few minutes to breathe in the neighborhood that shaped him. He paused near the old courthouse steps, scrolling through his phone, smiling at a message from his daughter about her college acceptance letter. For a brief moment, he wasn't a politician or a public figure, just a proud father. But nearby, a call went out. Someone reported a suspicious man loitering near government property. The description was vague, but one detail stood out: black male, mid-30s, wearing a hoodie. He didn't know it yet, but the quiet pride in his heart was about to be tested in ways he could never imagine. Because in the next few minutes, the same hands that once raised bills for equality would be forced behind his back, accused of a crime that never existed. The air was warm, still, and heavy, the kind that made every sound sharper. Marcus adjusted his hoodie, unaware that a pair of squad cars had just turned onto the street. From across the courthouse lawn, 2 officers watched him. To them, he wasn't a senator enjoying a quiet moment. He was a silhouette that didn't belong. Their eyes narrowed as they whispered into their radios. Seconds later, the calm of the afternoon shattered with the crunch of tires and flashing blue lights. Marcus turned, startled. The sight was all too familiar. Police lights, raised voices, the sudden weight of suspicion that black men knew too well. He'd written speeches about this, stood on Senate floors demanding reform. Now he stood frozen, caught in the very storm he'd spent years trying to end. "Sir, can we help you?" One officer called out, but it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a warning. Marcus tried to stay calm. "Just waiting for my ride," he said, voice steady, hands visible. The second officer circled closer, eyes scanning him up and down. "Got some ID?" He reached slowly for his wallet, feeling the pulse quicken in his neck. He'd told his son once, never make sudden moves. The thought hit him hard. Is this what he'll remember about me? The moment his wallet came out, one officer's hand went to his holster. Hands where I can see them. Marcus froze mid-motion. "It's just my ID," he said quietly. "Step away from the building," the officer ordered. He complied, stepping back onto the sidewalk as passers-by began to notice. Some slowed to watch. Others crossed the street, pretending not to see. That silence, thick, complicit, cut deeper than the shouts. One of the officers spoke into his radio. Suspect refusing to comply. Marcus blinked. Refusing? He hadn't moved an inch. He raised his voice, still calm. "I'm Senator Marcus Hill. I think there's been some kind of mistake." They didn't react. Maybe they didn't hear him. Or maybe they didn't care. The first officer stepped forward, handcuffs out. "Sir, I'm going to need you to turn around." A small crowd had gathered now, phones raised, recording. Marcus could feel every eye on him, every whisper of disbelief. He thought about his daughter watching this online later, seeing her father treated like a criminal on the very steps where he'd once spoken about justice. "Please," he said softly, "let me explain." But the words were swallowed by the sound of metal, the cold click of cuffs locking around his wrists. He tried to breathe, tried to remember the training they'd given him for public incidents, but this wasn't politics. This was survival. "Sir, you're being detained for trespassing," one officer said flatly. Trespassing. On government property. The same property where his name was engraved on a plaque for public service. As they guided him toward the car, cameras kept rolling. Every step felt heavier than the last. In that moment, Marcus realized this wasn't just about him. It was about every black man who'd ever been told to cooperate while the world looked away. And just before the door slammed shut, he caught sight of something in the crowd, A young boy holding a phone, eyes wide, watching in silence. Marcus met his gaze and thought, if this is what justice looks like, what hope do we have left? The car door closed. The sirens wailed. And the world, once again, had found its next viral headline. At the precinct, they let him in under the flicker of buzzing lights. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered, "Is that who I think it is?" The words rippled through the station. A young officer froze mid-step, staring at the name on the file. His voice cracked. "Wait, Senator Marcus Hill." The room went still. The arresting officers looked at each other, color draining from their faces. The captain stormed out of his office, disbelief etched across his brow. "Get those cuffs off, now." But it was too late. The photos had already hit social media. The video was already spreading, captioned "Black man arrested for trespassing outside courthouse." No one mentioned that the trespasser had written the very laws protecting that courthouse. As the cuffs fell away, Marcus rubbed his wrists, the skin red and raw. No apology could undo the humiliation. No press statement could erase the fear in his daughter's eyes when she called, her voice trembling, asking, "Daddy, are you okay?" He looked around the room, officers avoiding his gaze, some whispering excuses, others scrolling through their phones. The silence was deafening. Marcus stood, shoulders heavy but unbroken. "You didn't just arrest me," he said quietly. "You arrested everything I've spent my life fighting for." No one answered. Outside, cameras flashed like lightning as reporters shouted questions. The same crowd that had watched in silence now swarmed to capture the fallout. And in the chaos, between the flashes, the questions, and the shame, Marcus realized something chilling. They hadn't mistaken him for someone else. They'd seen exactly who he was. And still, it hadn't mattered. Days later, he stood before the Senate again. But this time, his voice trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what he'd lived through. "I've read about injustice," he said. "I've fought against it. But until I felt its hands around my wrists, I didn't truly understand how deep it runs." His words spread far beyond the chamber walls, into homes, classrooms, protests, and conversations across the country. For some, it was a wake-up call. For others, an uncomfortable truth they could no longer ignore. Marcus knew the scars would fade, but the message had to stay. Because every headline, every name, every tragedy began the same way, with someone simply existing in the wrong skin. He gazed at the Capitol dome through his office window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Change wasn't a bill or a policy. It was a fight that started in the human heart. And as the screen faded to black, one question lingered: if justice can't recognize a man who writes the laws, how many others will it fail to see?